Um, I did not consciously plan to make this video and I don't know consciously what I'm about to say, but I need to share some thoughts. The 27th of August 2018, I knew myself to be the whole of reality. I recently reread what I had written. It was for 3 weeks, basically, during the month of August 2018. For 3 weeks I had some sort of a revelation, but it was not supernatural or religious in a sense of a transcendent state of consciousness. It was a calm realization. It lasted broadly 3 weeks, between the 11th of August and the 27th of August, broadly. And I wrote almost daily, not in a coherent and structured fashion, but the ideas in a classical sense, the thoughts that I had. And what happened is that I simply realized that I am a subject, and I perfectly understand that at this moment, and even in the future, anyone watching this will say, and when I said this to ordinary person, it's unintelligible, because every human, every thinking human, above the age 7, basically that's the age of reason, they say, experiences himself or herself as a subject. So that's the most common human experience for thinking subject, precisely. But what happened basically in philosophical language is that I realized that all the other subjects exist because I perceived them. So I became a subjective idealist. But I understood, without the conceptual vocabulary and terminology, that there can be only one idealist. If you are, it's not if, that the concept of idealism implies that all so-called idealist thinkers since Plato, they all exist in the mind of the one idealist, and this one mind in which, or through the mediation of which, all the other idealist thinkers is the mind of God. And I know that as of now it is unintelligible, that my truth is completely unintelligible, because I myself do not understand. I know this is true, and God knows it is true, and Hegel knows this is true. So there are three persons who know this: me, Hegel, and God. Sometimes they're identical, most of the time they are different. But I cannot lie about this. I am programmed by my own rules, I guess, to speak the truth. But I am understanding that I am also programmed probably to speak the truth, to make it intelligible. Because right now we are the 20th June 2022. My channels, I have 200 subscribers, so I know that whatever I say as of now will not be understood by anyone. But I understood, and I know that I have to actualize my truth, to make it wirklich, to talk like Hegel. And the only way that I have to convince anyone else, and eventually all other consciousnesses, of my truth is both very simple and also extremely complicated, is simply to produce a discourse, a speech, a logos, one might say, which proves that I understand others more than they understand themselves. And at some moment in the future, which will be now when they watch this, but they will realize, but this weird guy, he seems to understand us a lot. He understands how we function, some of us or most of us. He knows a lot about us. He seems quite dumb, but actually he seems also to be very smart. That's really weird. He can read through our mind. How is that possible? And when this happens, consciously I don't know when it will happen, but when this happens, the structure of reality will change ontologically, to use a philosophical language, namely that the truth will probably spread, and we will all realize that we are all one. We are all one consciousness. We are all one individual, one might say. And this individual has been broken. Here I talk really in vague language because it's not clear at all to me, so I speak with my empirical consciousness, and honestly, empirically this is not very clear. But the divine totality has been broken, separated, disconnected by me. I don't know how or when it happened, but the very fact that we experience ourselves as separate, discrete, distinct, shattered units is the proof that something has gone wrong, and that we have been broken. And there is one individual responsible for the breaking apart of the divine totality. And this is what Hegel calls the negative. And this is what the religions call Lucifer or Satan or the devil or whatever. Evil. And when I realized or remembered, I don't know, when I realized that I am the whole of reality, I realized that I am the root of all evil, because there is evil in reality. And if I am the cause, or the whatever, here I will not use complex philosophical determinations. If I am the cause of all reality, and I knew myself that I am the cause of all reality, I am the cause of all the evils in reality. And the way I express this, my writings are made available on the internet. I publish the links. I have them on USB key card on my computer. I will not delete them. I tried to do that in 2000. I won't delete anything I have written or said anymore. I used Christian terminology, and I said, but I am Satan and I am God at the same time. I am both. And I have thought about this problem, this question for many years, 2018, 2019, and for the past 4 months, I've been thinking about this daily. It's not very clear, but I could say that my empirical self, which is this individual that you see, is evil, and that good is the invisible spirit that you don't see, but that is being expressed through my speech. When I say true, intelligent, when I express truth, intelligence, and goodness through my speech, that would be one way. So my mind would be good and my body would be evil. But then there's the question, can my mind exist independently of my body? As of now, empirically, I'm not sure. I don't know. And all the problems, all my problems, but all the problems of the world, and all the problems that have been, that are, and that are to come, they originate because of what happened in August 2018. I recently reread what I wrote. It was very confused, expressed in ordinary language. I have improved my philosophical understanding. Now I could translate most of what I wrote in rigorous Hegelian language. But how should I explain this? The first, probably, it's not chronological, and what I remember from an empirical standpoint, if it's true or not, we will maybe know one day. But empirically, I remember the first question that I asked myself is, but what am I doing here? What am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? It was not expressed in this way, but that was the broad idea. Namely, I experienced myself as a cosmic self, if you will, the mind of the cosmos, and I call this God. This is just a word. You can call this the cosmic mind, if you will. But I asked myself, but what am I doing here? Why am I here? So that was a profound ontological trauma. Namely, I thought of myself as being God, and I didn't know who I was, what I was, and what I was doing here, which inspired a thought. Say, if God knows what he's doing, that's pretty scary. But if he doesn't know what he's doing, that's even more scary. So I laugh, but yeah. So that was the first, broadly, in the first few days or weeks that I realized this. I felt myself completely lost. And then, of course, I thought about the main religions. But the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, they have a God in their holy books. And I said, but there are billions of people on this planet who expect God to help them, to guide them, to save them, to enlighten them, whatever. And I said to myself, but and that's how things got really mixed up and confused, because I didn't think in terms of higher self, lower self, empirical self, universal, particular, singular, the absolute ID, the negative, reason. I had not the conscious knowledge of these thought, determination, and concept. So for me, there was no distinction between this empirical individual and my consciousness. I identified completely, one might say, with God, which was a mistake, a serious mistake, one might say. So this empirical individual officially is now 30 years old, but my consciousness emerged probably in 1995. So I said to myself, but God cannot have existed before my consciousness, which brings an enormous amount of questions and problems. How do I explain the existence of people who are older than me? How do I do that? The only solution, if that's a solution that I have found after many months and years of thinking, is that I have to produce a speech which will be so bring so much explanation to the state of reality that even people who are born 10, 20, 30 years before me as an empirical individual, they say, but he understands us so well. And then I speak. That's the reason why I make this video. When this happens, in a few days, a few weeks, or maybe a couple of months, I don't know, I will have no control, no conscious control over the process of reality. And my highest self probably has, but my lower self, my empirical self, has no conscious control. So the very structure of reality will change forever, probably. And yeah. And yeah, so that was the second thought. The third thought is that I realized that I am the root of all evil, which is very problematic for all those who suffer from evil, but also for me, because there is the moral problem and also the physical problem, which is about to come, namely that people will not be very happy when they realize that there is one individual who is responsible for all the evils, which is a thought that has been traumatizing. And I anticipate that people say, you deserve to be traumatized. I understand that, but whether or not I deserve this, and I think I do, but this is a paralyzing thought. Then I read a lot of Hegel. He says the negative, the positive, the negative helps bring some positive. That's how I try to balance my mind. But eventually I will have to deal with the problem of the negative, one might say, which is my problem, but it's also everyone's problem. And yeah. And other ideas that I had is, of course, the first naive idea was, okay, now I have understood, now my project is to bring about peace, global peace. Yeah. And another thought that I had was, I want to forget, because the burden is so heavy. Whether I am the devil or God or both, or neither one nor the other, whatever, it's the burden is heavy. So I acted cowardly. If I had to be honest, that was cowardly, but yeah, I rejected responsibility. I already said that when I made videos in 2019 on this channel, which are on another website, alt censored. I put the link in some of my other videos. So I rejected responsibility for a conscious reason, namely that I knew that this individual, I thought, which was true, I guess, that I still am, but in August 2018 I thought, but I am completely irresponsible, immature, weak, wicked, lazy. I suffer from most or all the flaws. I cannot go out into the world to share a truth and to say, don't worry, I will take care of all your problems, because I could not even take care of my own problems. I was a mess. I wrote, it's written, and I haven't changed it, that I said in August 2018 that I am pathetic. So, yeah. And I had another thought, namely that I wanted to end my consciousness, to annihilate my consciousness, but also to annihilate the whole of reality, to negate. I don't know how, but to go back, if I ever was, because here the notion of chronology, they become blurred. So I wanted to extinguish myself, basically. Yeah. Yeah. And this experience, which the comical, which is also the tragic aspect, is that I might say, but who cares about what happened to me? Only I can care about what happened to me, but I am splintered or shattered into billions of pieces. So basically what happened to me is of high concern to every thinking human, because we are all different, but one nonetheless. Yeah. So there was a will consciously to try to save the parts of myself which do not know that they are parts of myself. And this conscious will still exists partly. I would like to save people from myself, because there is no one else to save them from than myself, my worst aspects. but there's also a conflicting will within me to simply to end myself, and or my consciousness or whatever. And yeah, so August 2018, I knew in my highest state of consciousness that I was ontologically broken, to speak philosophically, one might say. But there was an ontological trauma at the core of God, or the universe, the cosmos, reality, the world, call it whatever you want. And I knew that I would never recover. And yeah. And so yeah, I'm sharing these thoughts now because I have been thinking about this for the past 4 years, one might say, in one way or another, either trying to escape from this consciousness or to try to understand. But I have been thinking a lot about this, especially over the past 2 or 3 weeks. And there's another traumatizing event, one might say, which happened in December 2018, so a few months after my what I call my God experience, which is actually the birth of reason in Hegel's language. Reason becoming conscious of itself. I wanted to meet Stella. I talked about Stella in some other of my videos, and I would talk about her again because we are connected. I wanted to meet Stella empirically, because I believed that she was the only empirical individual outside of myself that I could convince of my truth, for many reasons that I will not develop. I've briefly talked about in most of my, not most, but some of my videos, but whatever. I'm just sharing my thoughts now. So I believed that she was the only person that I could convince of what had happened to me in August 2018. And so I wanted to meet her, and I had a consciously selfish will just to be with her for a moment, and then we would, that's what I thought, we would bring about peace on earth. That's what I consciously believe. I had a conscious, very selfish will to just be with her, because at this moment she was the person that I loved the most and that I was the most attracted to consciously. And so it was kind of weird, because I wanted to share my truth about God, but I had no conscious knowledge that she was actually a part of me. So it was not very clear. That's the proof that I was not very intelligent. I'm still dumb. Maybe I will always be partly dumb, but that's the proof that empirically I was not very smart, one could say. And that's when I made a very serious mistake. for myself and for others. How should I explain this? I consciously planned to do good in the long run, and it turned into a religious catastrophe, one might say. God knows what happens. I will explain myself, and if I don't give all the details, God will. But I will explain in some of my next videos that what really happened. But this is a second ontological trauma, because that's when I realized that my empirical self was not in control. And when I say thank God, because thank God maybe, I was not in conscious control of my actions. I mean, I consciously believed that I was doing good, but it turned into really bad. And this is dialectics. And now I've been talking for 30 minutes. If I've been telling these two anecdotes, which I've already mentioned in some other of my videos, it's because I am ontologically traumatized by many events, one might say, but these two events are really, as of now, they are the most traumatizing, because the first is my truth that I am the whole of reality is ludicrous. I know that this is the truth, but I don't believe in my truth. So that's why I fail to convince anyone else, because I cannot yet justify or explain, because I do not fully understand the cause, the consequences, the conditions, empirically I still ask myself questions. I make lots of hypotheses every day for the past many weeks, for the past 2 or 3 weeks. I've been making hypotheses in my mind by reading books, trying to explain how is this possible. And I have read Fichte, Hegel, of course, Philip K. Dick a little bit, and Neil Walsch, because they all have in common that in their writings it is made mention of a God. It is not necessarily named God. It can be the higher self, or the transcendental ego, or the cosmic self, or a Valis or zebra in the imagination of Philip K. Dick. Or reason for Hegel. Hegel is the most rigorous because he actually gives an explanation. These 4 authors, the books of these authors have in common that the books talk about an entity which becomes conscious of being the sole reality, and which at the same time does not know consciously what this entity is. And this is what I experienced. And then of course comes in Hegel. He says basically, that's part of the process, but actually me, Hegel, I know everything. Which brings us to the question of Hegel, because what has happened over the past 2 or 3 weeks is that I have read the whole Encyclopedia. Not the Science of Logic, not the Phenomenology, but the Encyclopedia. And we are the 20th of June. If I had to use quantitative determinations, now I'm an expert in quantitative determinations. it's not rigorous. As I said at the beginning, I speak as an empirical individual. I know that I have a subconscious, which is maybe trying to manipulate me, and a superego, if I use the psychoanalytical language, which is also trying to manipulate me. Help me, I'm being manipulated by all the aspects of me except the aspect which is conscious. Yeah. What could be called the universal and the singular, and I am in the particular, in the middle, so to speak. And what has happened is that if I had to use quantitative proportions, if I read the logic of the Encyclopedia, not the science of logic, there are many versions of the science of logic, but I'm talking about the logic of the Encyclopedia, which is the very simplified logic. If I focus and pay attention, let us say that I understand 85% of what Hegel says, of what is written. If I really focus, I understand, if I pay a lot of attention, I understand the categories, the reflections, Bestimmungen, and the concepts. It requires a lot of intellectual effort, but I get the idea at 85% broadly. And then, and if you watch, whoever you are, if you watch the process of the development of my videos, I do not watch my videos. Some of them I watch them, but most of them I don't watch my videos. But you will notice that in the process there are moments when I understand some ideas, so I am becoming intellectually smarter, and the smarter I become, the more I realize that I was completely dumb, which is very Hegelian, namely the smarter you become, the more stupid you realize that you have been, which is a part of my psychological characteristic, namely that I will be bitter against myself for having been so stupid. The more intelligent I become, the more resentful or angry or bitter against myself I will be, because I will realize I have been a complete idiot, while at the same time being very smart, and I will resent myself for having been so stupid. I know this because I experience this daily, basically. So, yeah. And once you get broadly the meaning and it's not the meaning, but the logical structure of the shorter logic, as they call this, then if you read the philosophy of nature, you understand what Hegel was trying to express. And Hegel, there are many things to say about Hegel, is a thinker that you have to read him through the various moments of his own logic. So you have to read the philosophy of nature through the mediation of the logic, and then read the logic through the mediation of nature, and then read spirit through logic, logic through nature. And it's an interconnected interplay of reading, cross-reading, one might say. I have realized over the past couple of weeks the infinite complexity of the mind of the entity that we call God. The infinite complexity. It's infinitely more complicated than whatever. And so yeah, and then so the philosophy of nature, I'm not very knowledgeable about the sciences of nature, but I know that if I took 5 years of intensive study of physics, chemistry, biology, I could understand pretty much everything Hegel was trying to express in the philosophy of nature. But even without these knowledge of, I have a very vague knowledge of modern physics, biology, chemistry. Even this vague knowledge is sufficient to understand broadly what Hegel was trying to express. So let us say the philosophy of nature, I understand 50%, namely, at least now, because I have understood most of the logical idea, I understand what the philosophy of nature is. Yeah. And the logic of spirit, the philosophy of spirit, here I understand in broad outline 95% of what Hegel writes in the Encyclopedia. So we are the 20th of June. If I could summarize, I'd say I understand 85% of the logic. I understand the idea of nature, not all the details. Maybe this joke will become comical in the long distant future. But at least I understand what Hegel was trying to do. And I understand broadly the whole process of the logic of spirit. So whoever or whatever I am in the process of recovering my mind in the broad structure. The architecture of my mind, I am starting to recover. That is what has been happening over the past 2 weeks on an empirical level. And I will share, because God knows what I think, but I will share with the world. Once you understand the logic of Hegel, everything becomes clear. From the perspective of everything becomes clear, because it's coherent, it's rational. Once you get the logic, you understand nature and spirit, and it becomes not necessarily perfectly clear, but it becomes very clear. And I had this thought several times over the past days or couple of weeks, namely that for those who vaguely know about Hegel, have heard vaguely about Hegel, they often think Hegel is the most obscure, unintelligible, incomprehensible thinker ever. This is very Hegelian, namely that the most obscure is the most brilliant, maybe. And I am in the process of my development I am realizing, or I have realized broadly over the past few days or a couple of weeks, that actually what Hegel says is very clear. It's very clear. I will say what I think. When you understand broadly the writings of Hegel, you realize that Hegel is, the writings of Hegel, I would say, the only coherent thinker, the only serious thinker, because he defines every category, every Reflexionsbestimmungen, every concept, and he uses the process of the self-structuring process, one might say the Selbstbestimmen in German, the self-determining process of logic to apply these categories to nature and eventually to spirit. And when you do that in a coherent, systematic, rigorous fashion, which is Hegelian, it becomes very clear. And here's the Hegelian trick. Hegel always comes up with a trick, I guess, is that the more I speak again as an empirical individual, the more I understand the writings of Hegel, the more they become very clear, very intelligible, and the more I say, but Hegel is actually very easy to understand. But the trick is that the easier Hegel becomes to understand, first I feel very smart because I understand Hegel, but also I feel completely dumb for having failed to understand such an easy way of thinking. So the more I feel smart, the more I feel dumb, which is typically Hegelian, I might say. And also, the more I understand the writings of Hegel, the less I understand other writings, because that's, I will talk about this in coming videos. I have been working on this. If you do not define language, the meaning of words, if you do not define the words that you use and the underlying logical category which are being expressed in the language that you use, if you do not rigorously define what you mean, this is the root of all misunderstanding and eventually all conflicts, because people talk all the time, they use categories like quality, the various quantitative determinations, cause, consequence, conditions, possibility, necessity, concept. They use this every day because human beings are programmed to use these categories to think and to express themselves, but no one thinks about defining what he or she means when he uses this or that category, and the word, which is not necessarily a logical category, but it is an expression, the word that is being used. So I'm in a process of understanding the broad picture of who the one who is considered the most complex, most abstract, most unintelligible thinker ever. The more I understand him, the more I understand reality, but also the more reality becomes ever more complex, because there are several layers of interpretation, and the less I understand ordinary language, so the more I am connected to the mind of God, the more I am disconnected from reality, which is a problem. But anyway, yeah. And I also understood and that my job now, I know I have to do this, is to share the idea, the Hegelian idea, the idea, which is partly the mind of God. My role is to share this idea with the external world, so that it becomes actualized, wirklich, so that we all progressively, I don't know how it's going to happen, but that we recover our mind, that God becomes actualized. Because what I have been doing for 4 years now is to one might say, one way of explaining, to keep God for myself. And there are many definitions of evil, and this is one of the many definitions of evil, namely it is the subject who wants to to keep God for himself, close down, say, God belongs to me, I want to keep it for myself. So I know that I have to, this is how empirically I think what I have to do now is to make the writings of Hegel intelligible to most people. And when others understand that the truth about God, about the world, about the universe, about who they are or who they think they are, and the truth about me, which actually is connected, when they understand this, reality will change on a radical ontological level. And yeah. So yeah. I know what I have to do in the short term, namely to release the idea, to maybe as an empirical individual, maybe that's the limit of my mission. When I say to make Hegel intelligible, and then I have to confront my own negativity, my own evil, and then I will be alone to solve all my problems and all the world's problems. And yeah. Yeah. So I will do what I consciously think is right, knowing what I know. And I know that I will do what I think is right, as long as it is really the good thing to do, and eventually I will do probably something that I think is good, but it will backfire, like it most of the time does, and I will do the wrong thing, and then I will be alone to cure my own evil, if this can be cured. And I will collaborate with God, the real God, and when I go astray. Maybe I've always gone astray, I don't know. But when I really become negative, then the real God will intervene and yeah, that's what I had to share. And if I had to summarize 55 minutes of video, what I want to say is that I have spent the past 2 weeks reading the Encyclopedia every day, and I understand that I cannot share my truth. I could not have shared my truth before, because my truth is so, I will use the word ludicrous as of now, that I have to prove to others that first, okay, I understand the writings of Hegel, not all of them, but the Encyclopedia. I will not try to understand the Wissenschaft der Logik, nor the development of the phenomenology, just the Encyclopedia. I understand the process of God, which enables me to understand the process of reality, which also enables me to understand this empirical individual partly. And this is one of the mysteries. What is mysterious is speculative, as Hegel would say. But I have been thinking really about me as an empirical individual, and I don't really know what I am empirically. Yeah, whatever happens, I did not expect that things would turn out this way. I guess that I have only myself to blame, so I can only blame myself. But and if I blame others, which I will probably do, it will be dishonest. But the truth is so, as I envision this, the truth is so I have no words, because I would say strange, but I don't know. Yeah. And another anecdote that I will share, what I've been experiencing over the past week, which had never happened to me before, not with this intensity, namely that I think constantly, and when I don't think, when I sleep, I dream. So I am in a constant state of mental activity. And I would like to say that I work all day, which is partly true but also partly false, namely that there are long moments when I am just sitting in my chair, just thinking, and then I am so exhausted. It had never happened to me before. I am physically exhausted by the activity of thinking. Well, one might say, well, thinking is lazy, and which is partly true, but I can express what I experience, namely, just thinking, and I cannot stop thinking. And I believe that I have most of it stupid thoughts, but also profound thoughts. And this leaves me in a state of physical exhaustion. And I also know, I said this maybe already a month or 2 months ago, but it's becoming more intense. I experience violent shifts of mood, emotions, from outbursts of laughter, passionate love, terror, profound despair, bitterness, amazement, my psychological state, which is also my intellectual state, is becoming unstable, and I'm trying to stabilize the instability. And I'm partly dumb on a super level, on a lower level maybe I'm very, very, very smart, but on an empirical level I'm partly dumb. I am smart enough to understand that there are conflicts and tensions and mood shifts in the world at large, in politics, geopolitics, environment, shifts of consciousness. I am smart enough to realize this. But the question which I have been asking myself for more than 4 years, with the exception of when I didn't think 2020 and 21, but 2018, 19, and the past 5 or 4 months, the question that I've been asking myself almost constantly is, what is the relationship between this empirical individual and the content of my soul or my heart or my mind with the external world? I long held the belief that empirically I was completely contingent, and this came from the reading of Hegel, which says that the individual is kind of a contingent, if you want it to be polite, that it is just the universal idea which is being actualized through the mind of a random individual. I simplify, but basically. But actually, the more you read Hegel, that the singularity, namely me as an empirical individual, I am not completely contingent. Namely, the determinations of my soul, they are not, that's what I think now, they are not contingent. So what I'm starting to think is that the goods and the evils of the world, they are not just the goods and the evils of God as a universal self. It might be, that's what I'm starting to believe, the goods and the evils of me as an empirical individual. I know that my role is to abolish myself, to negate myself empirically. I have to do that. It's not going to be very pleasant for me and maybe for others, but I have to do this. I read Hegel, and I know that at some point I will have to. But for those who have watched, or maybe will watch, at this moment I don't really know, but there has been a moment in my intellectual development over the course of the past 4 months when I listened to a song by Lady Gaga. I made a video when it happened, maybe a few days after, but when I had really a shift of consciousness, which I had not anticipated empirically, namely that I started to think, but am I important as an empirical individual? Is my singularity, my determinations, my personal history, my personal character and mood and psychology, is it really important? Because until then I had read about the negative, but what Hegel says about the negative basically is that the individual is contingent and kind of worthless. It's just a tool used by reason to actualize itself. And there are still these conflicting tendencies within me, namely that me as an empirical individual with the content of my soul, which I'm starting to realize is becoming darker every day, but am I important for the real God? And a part of me thinks more and more that I might be, and at this moment I'm very conflicted because yeah, and I will conclude by expressing a thought that I had whatever has happened, happens, or will happen. I did not expect that I would become the devil. That was the first surprise when I realized that what Hegel means by the negative is what people call the devil in religion. I did not expect that. And I would still be surprised by my own horrors, probably. But if I look deep within my soul, I might find enough darkness to say, okay, if there is a devil, if there has to be a devil, okay, there is darkness in my soul, okay. But then I did not, I even least expected to be God. That's even more surprising, and I still struggle to believe that I am God. That's even more unexpected, because to be the devil is kind of easy. You just have to be wicked and dark and evil. To be God, it's much more difficult. You have to be creative, to be smart. When I say the devil is creative and smart also, but if you want to be God, you have to be kind of wise and just and good. At least that's what the people have the idea about God, and to be loving and to be fair and to be strong and to be, I mean, the good qualities that we usually associate with God. So I still don't really believe that I am God. I still have a view of God which is way too high for me to reach for now, and maybe, I don't know, but anyway. And an even more unexpected outcome, one might say. And here I will not develop, but it's clear for me, and I will maybe talk about this when I have the opportunity. What I even least expected is that I might be human. That the truth, which I'm not really sure it is, but it's partly the truth, at least, that the truth about God and the devil and might be the human condition, which is what basically the Bible says, but I've not been a very good Christian up until now, one might say. That the divine with the good and evil aspects actualize himself or itself in man, and that man is partly the truth of God with the wickedness and the better aspects. That is even more unexpected. That humans are made in the image of God, which is what the Bible says and what I myself have understood conceptually, but actually to really understand that man is the creation of God, and that man, humans, really are made in the image of God. That's yeah. So it's been 1 hour and 12 minutes. I have broadly, empirically shared. I understand myself enough to say that my higher self will correct me. My lower self also probably they will find a way to manipulate me one way or the other. But I spoke with my empirical consciousness, and I am conflicted, and I have to solve my own problems, which are the world's problems. And I know, or I believe that I cannot be at peace as long as the whole of reality is at peace with itself. And yeah. So I will take the time that God, the real God, grants me to pack my stuff, communicate in a serious philosophical way my truth, which is not complete, but the structure of my truth, of what I think is my truth, that I found in the writings of Hegel. And once the writings of Hegel are made intelligible to another consciousness and eventually to all others, then I can only make hypotheses, but God, the real God, the cosmic mind, if you will actualize himself. And when this happens, at this moment, if I speak empirically, I don't know. In terms of consciousness, I don't know what will happen. will I survive the death of my empirical self, or the torment of my empirical self? Will I survive above, in, within? I don't know. And I have made the choice to just express my message, I guess. I never I laugh because I never thought that I would have a message to share. Yeah, my message. And yeah, that's what I had to share. And yeah.